What's going on, everybody, and welcome to the Ris3n Replay Cast. I know it's a little bit absent on one of my graphics, or maybe two of them, but tonight we will have a series of good games for you. We've got a TVZ submitted by Arctic. We have a ZVZ submitted by Jay. We've got a PVZ, a lot of Zerg today, submitted by Kugel. And we have, most recently, a PVT submitted by Sun and Aidan together. So I'm going to roll that intro, and then we are going to get on in to the matches. What's going on, everybody? I am your host, Revolt, here with the week 2 of the Ris3n Replay Cast. This first game we got for you is a TVZ on Blue Shift. It's going to be between Arctic and a Zerg. Without further ado, here we go. Spawning in the top right-hand corner is the Ris3n player, Barcode, but we all know that he is actually, in reality, Arctic, versus his opponent as the Blue Zerg. In the bottom left of Blue Shift, we have Karakadin. Probably going to call him Kara or Karak, or something that's easier to pronounce than his name. So, going on into this match, TVZ is a matchup that I love to observe. I really do. It's normally pretty action-packed. It's one that nary a dull moment is the phrase I would use. You know, once you kind of get into the action, even if there is an all-in, most of the time there's something going on as the Terran player wants to be getting in the Zerg player's face. Doesn't really want to be, neither player really wants to be sitting back too much. But we'll have to see. So far, it looks like standard openings from our Zerg and our Terran, as we have what looks to be a Reaper expand going up against a Hatch gas pool opening for the Zerg player. So, these Zerg openers, I feel like I'll watch a bunch of different Zerg players, and a lot of people will do a different ordering, mainly Hatch first, but a different ordering of, pool and gas. End of the day, not a big difference. What you're pretty much sacrificing is a slightly later queen versus a slightly earlier speed. So, stylistic choice. It is going to be the Reaper expand coming in here for Arctic, and we'll have to see what he can get done with this initial Reaper. Normally, the answer is little to nothing, but I mean, if you've got the cheeky Reaper control, often you can get more damage done than you should. So far, so normal. Looks like we are seeing the second racks coming in here for Arctic along with the second gas, starting to look eerily like the 16 Marine drop. With a factory coming in, he's getting that reactor, which means he's going to be pumping out Marines. He's probably going to be taking up towards Medevacs, whereas our Zerg player is doing normal Zerg player things, getting a relatively low, I say that there be a fast Roach Warren. So drones do continue to go out, but we're going to keep an eye on that, as that's an earlier Roach Warren than I feel like you would generally tend to see from a Zerg player. Reaper kept at home, wants to be safe, wants to make sure no Lings kind of sneak by and you know, either try and snipe the SCV while it's still building the command center, or even start to do some economic damage while the Reaper's across the map, as a lot of Zerg players will do that. They'll send it across fast. Looks like the +1 missile attacks coming in for our Zerg player. Still on 2 bases. Interesting call. The Reaper comes in. He does see the Evo chamber, and he does see the Roach Warren. So he's ID'd. Okay, and there, at that point, you know, there are going to be roaches. Like, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. There are. There just are. And we'll have to see how he chooses to respond to that. Getting up the reactor, getting up the stim, my guess, he's going to swap that over, as most Terrans are wont to do. Get the 2 medevacs, and push across with a bunch of Marines. Ooh. Oh, geez. Overlord on hold position will go down, and that will supply block him, although 4 more Overlords finishing. And whenever you're building that many Overlords at a time, it pretty much means you're going to want to crank out a bunch of Roaches, because there's no reason to. A Ravager on the way, along with 3 more Roaches. So there's going to be a hell of an attack coming from Karak. The question is, will our Terran player be ready? Opting to get a few Hellions, not a bad call. Medevac will be out shortly, and we'll have to see when he truly scouts the extent of this build. This Marine comes in here, is going to... Oh, yeah. So that's going to ring some alarm bells. Whenever you see that many Roaches and no third base, you're thinking, I wonder if he's going to use those Roaches to attack me. And the answer here is yes, he is going to. And Karak is pushing across the map. At the same time, Arctic's looking to meet him halfway. Will pick off a few Lings, but I do not know if he wants to meet these units here in the middle of the map. 1 bile going down, taking out a few Marines already. Hellbats going in, but they're going to get melted, and this Marine force cannot hold up to the strength of the Roach Ravager. A 3rd CC is coming up on the way, but these Roaches and Lings are coming now. They are slow Lings with no Ling speed on the way. 2 Cyclones coming out. That is the correct decision, but this is a scary, scary army lining up outside of his natural, and he's starting to get some work done onto those depots. Phew. These Cyclones cannot come out soon enough. Slow Lings coming in. They're not going to do very well against those Hellbats, but it is the Roaches and Ravagers behind it that you really got to be worried about. SCVs are pulled. Vials go down. They mainly whiff. Good pull away from Arctic, but I don't know if he has enough. Actually, with these 2 Cyclones joining the fight, he might just have enough to pull this off. There are some Lings and Ravagers left over, but with those 2 Cyclones, he will clean up the rest of that attack, but at what cost? Taking a look at the worker count, it is 24 SCVs to 21 drones. So neither player really in a great economic spot at this point. More Roaches coming across the map, but with a Marauder and 2 Cyclones here, Arctic is not at all afraid. Oh, and Stim is done. These Roaches are just going to die. They have no chance at getting out. Looks like these 2 do escape, but I mean, this is the point in the game where it gets a little bit tricky, because as Zerg, your all-in has been held, right? And you want to build drones, right? You want to get back in the game by getting an economy going, getting a 3rd base, getting drones, but Arctic's not going to give him the chance to do that. He's going to say, if you want to stay in this game, you're going to contend with this, to be fair, relatively ragtag band of Terran forces, but a dangerous one nonetheless. There are a few Roaches, but considering that there's nothing really to challenge this Liberator, he can kind of poke in, retreat to his Liberation Zone, and ooh, you don't want to be tanking Liberator shots. The Liberator's doing massive damage, takes out a Queen. He is going to try and bile it down, but with only 2 Ravagers, one of which misses, he can't take it out. The Liberator stands strong. Some of the bio units go down, but more Roaches falling. Arctic might just be getting pushed back, but his thirst CC has finished. no third base on the way for the Zerg player, and he's going to try and sneak in and do a little bit of economic damage in the back with this Liberator. We'll have to see how this goes down on two fronts. Liberator does set up his zone of freedom, takes out 2 drones, but it looks like this Queen might be able to handle the rest. Oh, drones actually getting rallied back in, but the Liberator does die to the Queen, and it looks like this Roach Ravager force will be able to clean this up. So, a little bit of a normalization from the game. Zerg player still a little bit low on economy, but has an army that Arctic can't quite challenge at this point. Definitely not challenge out on the map, and he might be a little bit hard-pressed to muster a defense even here at his natural. Taking a look at the army supply, it is wildly in favor of Karak. He's got 42 to the 17 of his Terran opponent, so this could be a tough hold if Karak pushes in with the Roach Ravager now. No Roach speed yet, but 1-1 is done. Yeah, 1-1 is done for the Roach Ravager. Most importantly, I think that armor, whenever you have low unit numbers, especially with units like Roaches going up against those fast attacking stimmed Marines, that armor really does gain value throughout the course of a fight. So a lot of Ravagers, a lot of Roaches, and he's going to move his third base out, it looks like, but how long will he hold it as here comes this attack? One Ravager getting pushed or getting killed right away, dodges the biles, but it doesn't matter that he dodged the biles. There's just too much meat on the bone of this Zerg army as he is pushing on into the natural, uninhibited, and this is looking really, really dicey for Arctic here. Pulls the SCVs, which allows his bio to get some DPS done, actually a decent amount. Most of the Roaches, it looks like, going down. Some bios connecting onto the bio of the Terran, but I don't know, mainly only Ravagers left for the Zerg player, but with this last Marauder going down, a tank is out, and he does get it siege, so he might just be able to hold this position as it starts shelling away on this only Ravager army. Biles do go down, and the tank falls, and this is looking really dicey for the Terran. More SCVs being pulled, more SCVs going down. There is a Marauder, needs to stem that in and get it in on the action, but with all this falling, I'm not exactly sure how Arctic is going to find his way out of this game. Another bile takes out more and more Marines, and that worker count that was wildly in his advantage has now swung the other way. It's 7 SCVs to 41 drones. He does have the 3rd CC, and he has anchored his defense for now, which will allow him to kind of get into the 3-base economy and 3-base production that he needs. But the question is he too far behind from that massive attack from the Zerg that did a ton of damage? We saw him do a pretty good job at dodging the biles, but at the end of the day, whenever it's a numbers game like that versus the Zerg, it's really, really tough, right? When there's just so much HP, so much armor on those upgraded Roaches, and he took out, let's take a look. He's taken out 52 workers. 52 SCVs have gone down this game, ladies and gentlemen. That's not drones. Because you expect to lose drones. 52 SCVs. So this is actually an interesting, taking out some overloads over here, this is actually an interesting inversion of, I feel like, the standard TVZ meta, where normally you see the Terran trying to damage the economy of the Zerg, while the Zerg player is trying to get as big as he possibly can, economically speaking. However, this game, we've actually kind of seen the opposite, where Arctic took his fast 3rd CC, has been playing a generally macro style, and this Zerg player's just been trying to knock him off even keel as much as he can. A ton of Ravagers, Roaches, and Lings out. Still no Ling speed. That could come back to haunt him, though. The 3rd base for the Zerg player is going to be up shortly, but there is a double drop with some more units coming out, kind of wandering around, maybe looking for a good position to get a push going. Both players actually pushing out, crossing the middle of the map at around the same time. Looks like we could have a wee bit of a base trade scenario on our hands here, and that's awesome. I love me a nice base trade. Roaches and Ravagers coming in. It looks like they are going to be the first of the armies to pounce on the opponent. Sees that there's no opposition, actually catches a decent amount of reinforcements, but at the same time, Arctic realizes this and immediately starts pushing into the natural. Here come the Roach Ravager Lynx. They're going to start taking out SCVs, but both players are just ransacking each other's naturals. All the SCVs going down. A little bit of indecision here from Karak. It looks like he's going to go try and take out this third CC. Natural goes down for the Zerg player. Whew. Looks like we're about to go total chaos mode. Arctic re-rallying his units to inside the main, wants to muster up as much of a defense as he can, if only to pick off as many units for any future fights, and it looks like he is going to have a decent amount of army. He's pushing into the main. There's nothing here to defend for Karak. A few bios actually do kind of land and take out one of those oh so important medevacs, which you do get super important later on in a base trade. Is trying to stem and catch up to these Ravagers. He doesn't want to eat any more biles, but I don't know. We're descending into full crazy town. There is only one medevac to sustain this bioforce that is already badly bruised, and the Zerg player is running up into the Terran main base. He's taken out all of the army, it looks like, almost all of the SCVs as, wow, one drone. So 1 drone to 9 SCVs. It looks like most of those remaining 9 are about to go down here anyway, though. 4, 3. So there's just going to be no workers on this map, I guess. There's going to be no workers. Let's see. So yeah, 0 SCVs to 1 drone currently. So pretty much all of the drones taken out. The lair will go down, and these broodlings actually getting every little bit of damage that's important. 1 drone does go down. There's a little bit of mining over here at this base for the Zerg player. Ooh, needs to keep this tank alive. Needs to keep it alive. It looks like he will. He will. So both players have enough bank to kind of continue producing. 2 biles coming down. They do whiff. Both those Ravagers going down along with a Spine Crawler, but every unit he loses here is important. Wants to keep all of this alive. Another Marauder falls. Can he take out this Marine through the healing? He does. This Marauder and the tank should finish off that Spine Crawler, and 11 supply to 43. Interesting. So the Terran's buildings are still alive. He's still got a decent amount of supply room. He can continue to produce. Oh, and he does escape with everything, but I just don't know. Both players are going to start to continue to mine. 3 more drones on the way. Mules are being dropped, and Arctic needs to get more units out. He needs more units, as this is just not an army he can contest at this point. Let's take a look. 10 Ravagers and 5 Roaches to the Marauder tank and 3 medevacs. Now, Karak has not identified where these buildings from Arctic landed, which is over here. He has not found that out yet, which means he has a little bit of time to produce some more bio, but the clock on him has to be a little bit limited here, as, the stuff gets landed. Biles do whiff, though, and he keeps both of those very important units alive for now. More drones being produced here as the spawning pool does start to get rebuilt. A little bit of an army coming back up here from Arctic, though, as he's got 4 barracks and a factory still producing, but Karak's seen it. He's seen it. He knows where the mining is, and my guess is he's going to take these units and he's going to start to try and do something about it. Drone count rising up to 12 for Karak, and it looks like he sent some units to try and clear out the remaining buildings. Always a smart move in a base trade, right? Because if you can get the all buildings, if you kill all the buildings, right, they lose. So smart play, I think, from Karak, and he's sending these Ravagers over to this new base, but I don't think I guess now he sees with the Overlord, there might just be enough to defend it if he gets that tank sieged in time. Let's take a look from Arctic's point of view. Where did that medevac go? I think he lost that. Yeah, he lost that medevac and the Marauder and the tank, so the unit count vastly depleted actually here. He does have some Marines. Let's see how this engagement goes. He's got 2 tanks. Can he get them sieged in time? They siege up. Biles whiff. Here comes a game-changing engagement, and the Biles do land on one of the tanks, but it might just be too much as all of the army is falling here. One of the medevacs does go down to Biles, but that's the bulk of the army for Karak. He's got 16 drones, but I don't know if he will have the army to defend that for much longer. When these 4 Marines pop, he might just be able to go with that medevac, with that tank, and put some serious pressure on this last remaining base for Karak. Now, there is an expansion coming up. You know it's weird when this is the 17-minute natural that's being taken, right? Nice. But I think he needs to get into a little bit more gas mining. The Zerg player does. But even more than that, there's going to be an attack coming that I do not know if he is capable of defending, as if Arctic gets a good spot with that tank, he should be able to zone the Ravagers from just straight biling it. And oh, actually, initial 3 biles whiff, and the tank is going to start sieging away onto that spine crawler, and he needs to get that unburrowed as 2 more shots, and that thing is going down. 1 Ravager running forward eats a shot, and that's a dead spine crawler. Oh, that's a dead spine crawler, and there's not enough army here from the Zerg to contest this. The Marines stim in, kill a queen, kill a few drones, and only these 2 Ravagers are left, and with the medevac there, I don't think it will be enough. This last Ravager will go down. These Marines surrounded by drones, actually, and they will... The last Marine, a hero being healed by the medevac, battling surround on all sides of 4 drones. GG is called. And Arctic takes a victory in an 18-minute slugfest of a TVZ. Wow. Well, what a game to start ourselves off on. That was it was pretty crazy. I'm going to throw up the overlay briefly, but we will be back very shortly with a ZVZ courtesy of Jay. Welcome back, everyone. We are going into our next game, which will be a ZVZ. I know everybody out there loves ZVZ. This is a submission from Jay, once again, kind enough to submit another one of her replays, and this is going to be on Acid Plant. In the bottom right-hand corner, we have the blue Zerg representing Ris3n. We have Jay. And her opponent up in the top left-hand corner is going to be the red Zerg Dragon. Now, I assume this is not the streamer Dragon, as he plays Terran, and, yeah, it would be very different. But, already off the bat, it looks like we're going to be, I think, seeing macro openings from both of our players. I expect a 17 hatch, based on what we've seen. It looks like Jay and Dragon both going to get that at almost exactly the same moment. Let's see. Yeah. 1 second difference. Both players going for mirrored builds, as we see. More drones following it up. Now, I'll tell you what, guys. Whenever somebody GLHFs me at 1 minute in, I always think there's a cheese coming. I just always do. Because it's like, everybody says it at, like, 3 seconds, maybe 10 seconds. Who says GLHF at 1 minute into the game? Tell you what, normally it's somebody who's 12 pulling you. But that is not the case in this game, as looking at the production tab, we see almost exactly mirrored builds from these 2 players. I mean, it is a mirror matchup, but it's not often you see both players almost completely on the same wavelength. But we're going to have to see at what point this game will start to diversify, as spawning pools coming up for both of these players, and I don't know. ZVZ is a very weird matchup, right? Typically, there's the early phase in the game where there's maybe some crazy Ling Bane play, which can be very volatile, can end the game very early. But if it normalizes normally, what you'll see is two Roach-based compositions, Roach Ravager that is, going up against each other and seeing who can really get the upper hand. But I mean, who wants a standard game? I'm hoping we see some stuff that's a little bit crazy, but that's just me. Zergling speed is a little bit further ahead for Dragon, and he's actually making a decent number of Zerglings. It looks like two just popped, 2 more are on the way, and he already has 6, so 8 Zerglings suggests that maybe there's going to be a little bit of aggression. Maybe not a full commitment to it, but probably wants to get a little something done. These first 2 do come in, do get a great scout off on everything, sees that there's no Baneling all in, there's no Roach all in on the way, so a pretty successful initial scout there from Dragon. The Baneling nest is coming up along with 10 more Zerglings, and I think I was right. We are going to see a little bit of aggression. I mean, these are all the telltale signs of a Zerg that doesn't want the game to go on much longer, but it looks like Jay kind of has identified this. She set up an Evo wall with a queen. Oh, hopefully we'll get a queen back in position as more Zerglings coming across the map. Her Zergling speed is a little bit away from being done. She does have the +1 on the way, but this is a wall that Banelings do not want to attack into, and to be honest, Banelings won't attack cost efficiently into. Roach Warren coming up for Jay, so if she does manage to hold this pretty big attack, I think she should be in the better spot to get her composition, her mid-game composition out that she wants, as generally you don't want to be staying on Zerglings into the mid-game, but actually here comes a push. Tons of Zerglings streaming into the natural. This queen is blocking it off. The other one not getting around to help, and it looks like this queen might go down, and the floodgates are a bit open. Might be able to get a queen up in time, but here come the Lings. Here come the Banelings. So many drones. 11 drones going down. Still a few Zerglings ransacking the base. Manages, I think, to get more Zerglings and a queen in position, so I think the front is held for now, but not critical damage done. Only a 2 or 3 worker lead here for Dragon, and he's committing to more Banelings, which I do not think is the correct decision. Very shortly there will be Roaches out, and once you get a few Roaches out and you've got a wall like this, right, like Ling, it's going to take a lot to get Ling Bane aggression done. Overlord going down across the map. More Zerglings flooding on through, but 6 Banelings even coming up for Jay. Like, this is not gonna get anything done. Even still, a faster third base coming in here for Dragon, so he's got a backup plan to kind of fall back on, assuming this attack fails. All those Banelings coming in, they do not manage to get the queen, but trade with some of the other Banelings. Queen does go down, but so does most of the Ling Bane, and so he's got a third base lead. He's behind 1 drone, and he does not have a Roach Warren. So I think that this has relatively normalized, as here comes the third base for Jay. Both players are going to kind of get into a relatively normal mid-game. Faster layer here coming up for Dragon, so maybe, considering we haven't seen a Roach Warren, maybe we'll see a Spire, I think. Because, oh, actually, there it is. There's the Roach Warren. So possibly a faster Roach speed up for Dragon, which in Roach Wars, Roach speed can make an incredible difference. So we'll have to see how this plays out, as I said, both players kind of sitting back and macroing at this point, and it looks like it's kind of normalized. These Overlords have seen the third base, but they are going to get pushed back as more drones come in. Still no layer up from Jay as she's producing more queens. Interesting. So a little bit more of an economic investment from Jay versus a little bit more of a tech investment from Dragon. The lair here is coming up, and 9 roaches are on the way for Dragon. He's ran across the map with a bunch of lings, probably wants to get a little bit of aggression in here, but I just can't see it. There's roaches and there's banelings, and roaches and banelings normally spell the end of circling aggression, right? Like, 12 more lings coming up here for Jay. She wants to make sure her defense is solid, and I'm thinking it will be, at least for a little while. You know, maybe after he gets some roaches up, he can get something done. Sorry, my music's playing really loud in my ears here. Sorry about that. Back into the game, we have a quick infestation to an aspire. Interesting. Now, I'm thinking this has to be for a faster hive tech, right? Whenever I see an infestation pit and a spire go down at the same time, I think it's going to be a fast hive into broodlords, at least as an optimal plan. And interestingly enough, we're seeing burrow come up for dragon. Burrow, in my opinion, a very underutilized upgrade, as, I mean, there's, especially with roaches, but even with units that don't have burrow move, a ton of potential there that we haven't necessarily seen all Zerg players take advantage of. I don't know. We'll have to see. We'll have to see. That hive is coming up straight away for Dragon, and he's got a 4th base on the way. If he can secure these 2 additional gases at his 4th, then I don't know. There's going to be a very distinct threat of broodlords. Is once you get those gases, number 7 and number 8, that is really when you can start to power on the hive tech. But he's not there yet. He's not there yet, and getting to that point is a huge investment of resources. So there might be a window for Jay to maybe punish him for, honestly, a pretty greedy build here. Spore crawlers coming up. Interesting. Did she see the spire? So she did see the spire. So the spore crawlers make sense, right? Because most of the time it's going to be mutas, right? Like, and spore crawlers, obviously, very good against mutas. Taking a look at the income, it's about even right now, but will probably start to swing into Dragon's favor as he saturates this 4th base. 15 more roaches on the way, along with baneling speed and Zerg flyer attacks, and the creep is almost connected. Honestly, it's gonna be different players' creep, but pretty much almost all of this map is all creeped up. These rocks will be going down here, and Hydra speed. Interestingly enough, slight mistake, a double Hydra Den, but Hydra speed coming on here for Jay, which could be effective, right? Like if there are quick brood, Ultra Cavern. All right, so Dragon's he's going all out on the tech this game. He's going all out on the tech. He wants to have 4 bases, and it appears he wants to have all of his tech choices available to him. 3 Evos on the way, and honestly, this baneling speed might be very useful, especially if Jay starts to get into Hydralisks, as if any of you have ever fought Hydralisks with banelings, it's a fun engagement. It's a fun engagement, I'll just say that. The 2/2 ground or melee and carapace upgrades are coming in here for Jay, so her lings will start to do a decent amount of damage. Here come 7 Hydralisks, and these 2 players have really shown each other a lot of respect here. It was a very volatile early game, but neither one really wanting to be the player that makes the first aggressive move here. As we get into the mid to late game, looks like chitinous plating coming up here for Dragon, possibly suggesting he wants to get into Ultralisks. Which, I mean, why not at this point, right? Like, let's get some Ultralisks in here. I'm down. Well, I think it's official. Wait. A creep tumor was laid on your opponent's creep. That's hilarious. Yep, all over it. So we've got the double creep spread. The creep will be double spread. How often do you see something like that? Oh, jeez, that's hilarious. 14 Hydralisks on the way, along with an infestation pit, so Jay might start to get into a hive tech of her own. She's taking a bit of a supply advantage, which perhaps she could leverage into a bit of a push. We'll have to see. Needs to get this gas mining. Dragon does. He will have melee upgrade and the Ultralisk armor done soon, which means he can kind of produce a little bit of a ground army death ball, but even still, you really need to get that gas up so you can replace that expensive hive tech army. Oh wow, Aidan, what have you posted in my chat? Goodness gracious. I can't unsee that. Anyway. 2 Ultralisks coming in, along with a Greater Spire, so really trying to utilize that hive tech is Jay. 9 Overlords coming on in, +1. Well, how weird is that? They both started +1 within like 2 seconds of each other. It's a little bit crazy. But as I said, there's a Lurker Den and a hive coming on here for Jay. Lurkers, very, very good units in ZVZ, especially when you're facing a ground-heavy comp that includes armored units, and as we all know, Ultralisks and Roaches are both armored units. Wow, these guys are really just getting all the upgrades in the book here. I'm excited, because I feel like when we finally start to see clashes, there's going to be like almost nothing left unupgraded, which means we're going to be seeing the best of all the units. Looks like Adrenal and Hydra range coming up here. These guys have just been ultra passive, and I guess I can't say that I blame them as often, especially in a mirror matchup. You know, the aggressor can kind of face heavy repercussions from attacking into a position that the other player has fortified, but one of these two is going to need to smell blood in the water shortly, is going to need to get the composition that they want and start to do a little bit of aggression. It looks like both players kind of establishing 5th bases here, and I'm thinking that'll probably be the point of contention as 17 Banelings. And 16 Changelings, so, you know, if you're going to get 17 Banelings, why not get 16 Changelings to go on with it? 12 more Hydras and Adaptive Talons coming up here for Jay, as she's actually here, started to push onto this 5th base, will kill it, but might get pushed back, I think, by these Ultralisks as they are cleaving on through the Roach Hydra. She's instead opting to kind of swing around and push this other side, as does have a bunch of Banelings, might be able to try and get them in onto this mineral line. And there we see it, 13 Lurkers. 13 Lurkers is going to make you a dominant defensive position. Ooh, this Ultralisk eating Baneling shots, and these Roaches are going to be pushed back. There are more Hydralisks here behind it, but with a good Baneling hit, a bunch of these are going to go down to Roaches and Banelings, and all in all, maybe not the best trades, although at the same time, Jay is deciding to swing around to the other side of the map with these Lurkers, trying to pull this ground army into 2 places. The Lurkers run here into the 4th base, and they are going to burrow with that Adaptive Talons. These Spine Crawlers melt like a hot knife through butter. All these drones going down. The base starting to melt. These Ultralisks running in, but not even Ultralisks can really fight. And oh no, Roaches does force it back, but at the same time pushing in onto the 3rd base. Jay really pulling Dragon apart here, as there's just units all over the place. He's got a great army, but a great army doesn't mean anything if you can't defend your bases. Oh, the space is left alive with only a little bit of health, and here we could see Big Engage hops onto the Lurkers. Oh no! Terrible, terrible damage. Terrible damage. A huge amount of that Roach Hydra melting in a few Lurker hits, and Jay's using that opportunity to siege control of the middle of the map. There is a large amount of Roaches. They're going to clean up these Hydralisks, but looking at the supply, it looks like Jay might have just maneuvered her way into a position of the game that she has a firm control of. Oh my gosh, these lurkers. These lurkers have like 6 to 10 kills on all of them, and I think most of that is roaches and hydras. So that's, oh no, here they come, getting a good spot, trying to engage these lurkers, but it looks like, oh, does clean up the lurkers, but oh, at what cost? At what cost? And it looks like the cost is most of Dragon's army as well. He's pulled over there again. Jay hits in another position. There are corruptors in the sky, but what does it matter? Corruptors are fighting corruptors and hydras. That's not a fight they can take. The ground army's overwhelmed. The corruptors are going down in the air, and I think Dragon has been checkmated out of this game. GG is called, and phew, it took a while to get going, but once that ZVZ really hit its stride, it did not slow down one bit. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to pop up my overlay, and I will be back with another match, which I believe will be a TVP, which actually just happened this evening between Aidan and Suntzu. Be right with you. All right, boys and girls, we saw a TVZ. We saw a ZVZ. So for those of you that are biased against Zerg players out there, we do have a Zergless game here for you. And this is going to be actually between two members of the Ris3n community. The previous games have been between normally one member and one person, whether it was a practice game or on ladder, who was not, but this time we have actually two people who a lot of you I'm sure are familiar with. In the bottom left-hand corner, spawning as the purple Terran, we have Aidan. And in the top right-hand corner, spawning as the blue Protoss, we have Suntzu. Now, many of you probably know Suntzu as typically a Zerg player, but if you've messed around with his off races, you know that I believe actually he used to be a Protoss player in previous iterations of the game, and his Protoss play is it's nothing to shake a stick at, as he's dangerous no matter what race he chooses. And I'll be interested to see how Sun Tzu's very unique and adaptive style kind of translates to playing an off race. Aidan, I think most people know as generally a very solid Terran and a very macro-oriented Terran. Generally, you're not going to see too many crazy all-in builds from the guy, but when he does macro, he does it well. He knows how he wants to play the game, and generally he executes it pretty well. So I'm excited for this match. We are seeing a fast expand from Suntzu and what looks to be a Reaper expand here from Aidan. So, kick your feet up, grab the popcorn, crack open a cold one, and get ready, because we got ourselves a game. We got ourselves a macro game, I think. Already starting to rally these probes down to the low ground is Suntzu. He's got the Cyber Core coming up. Reaper is about to come out, and it will deal with this scouting probe, which has seen the factory, so has kind of a general idea of what the Terran's going for, but nothing specific enough that he's, you know, pinpointed the exact timing of any pushes that'll be coming his way. Cybercore finishes up. Suntzu is getting his second gas. Everything looking good, good old normal and standard here, pretty much on both sides. Looks like the Reaper is coming across the map and will be rallied to come up into this base post haste. Do it. Do it. Do it now. Come on. Well, anyway, the Reaper is hanging out over by the third base. In the meantime, he's starting to get a Cyclone and build Marines out of that reactor factory while he gets his starport up. Here comes the Reaper into the main, scouts out everything that there is to see, which is notably no tech buildings yet, but 3 gateways, which means maybe a little bit of light pressure, I would think. Still waiting on the tech choice of Suntzu. It could be a Twilight first, it could be a Robo first. Heck, it could be even a delayed Stargate, as even those can do some damage if you've thrown your opponent off, but it will, it looks like, be the Twilight Council following up his gateway opening, and I think that kind of makes sense. I think it does, because whenever you open up with multiple gateways, you kind of want to probably get into the Twilight to get upgrades for those gateway units, as, you know, Zealots without charge are much less effective. Stalkers without blink, much less effective. Even Adepts without glaive, much less effective. So, double forge following it up. So this looks like a pretty standard Protoss style. Pretty much what you're saying is, I probably want to play relatively defensively. I want to have a high number of gateways. I'm going to have a delayed splash, but I'm going to rely on heavily upgraded gateway units. And by heavily upgraded, I mean they're going to have a fast charge. There's probably going to be blink behind it, and they're going to be up on 1-1 and 2-2 faster than the Terran will get his upgrades. But it looks like there is a Cyclone drop coming in here for Aidan, and we'll have to see how much that can get done. Obviously, not going to get game-ending damage done, but if he catches him off guard, he might be able to catch off a few probes, which could be nice, as Suntzu has accrued himself a little bit of a worker advantage. Looks like 3 workers will go down along with a Zealot, but I think this push has been thrown back. Might pick off another Zealot, does not quite, but that's an effective drop, right? He kept everything alive, and he picked off enough to kind of irk himself out a little bit of damage and scout the composition of the Protoss player. Behind this, we have a Robo coming up as the 1-1 nears halfway completion, so this is pretty much exactly what I would expect to see out of a Protoss who wants to take a fast third base. So, ooh, and even a Templar Archives. It looks like this game is going to go the distance, as, you know, third base coming up, it looks like shortly for both of these, for both of these players. Double upgrades coming in for Suntzu. I do not think, no, there is no engineering bay here for Aidan, so that could prove a little bit negative for him, as it can be very, very, very difficult to start engaging Protoss armies when you start to go down in upgrades, especially if you ever get to the point where, you know, you're fighting and they have 2 armor over your attack, whatever that is. Like, you can just produce waves of Zealots that will just seem like they never die. And that's part of what this style tries to take advantage of for Suntzu. You get that fast double forge for a reason. And it looks like if we start seeing mid-game engagements, that might start to pay dividends for him. Third base nearing completion here from Suntzu. Aidan has taken a bit of a supply lead with a worker count even, which means his army is just a little bit stronger at the moment, but it's anchored pretty defensively back at his base, and I think Suntzu's goal here most likely is to try and delay an engagement until he has these 2-2 upgrades. The engineering bays are coming down, but they're a little bit on the later side, and considering that, and considering how fast the double forge is, if he can wait and fight 2-2 against 0-0, if only for a brief window, that's going to be a brutal fight. But it looks like Aidan smartly, it does not want to give him that opportunity, as we see a big push heading on over to the third base of Suntzu. There are 3 tanks. There are a whole boatload of Marines. There's 3 medevacs, even a Cyclone thrown in the mix, and he really needs to be in position. Storm isn't done. 2-2 isn't done. I do not know if he's going to be able to hold this if Aidan gets into a sieged up position that it looks like he is getting into. These 3 tanks sieging up, providing cover for the bio to stim into. There are Templar, but Storm is still almost 10 seconds, I think, away from being done. This bio running in here, trying to pick off whatever it can, then retreating back to the tank line. Here comes the collapse, though, from Suntzu. Tons of Zealots running in, but he micros behind the tanks. Tons of Zealots going down, but they've got great upgrades. A huge storm comes in as it finishes. A huge storm. Feedbacks going down, and I'll tell you what, that was really, really well done by Suntzu, because Aidan pounced on at a moment where he totally could, but Suntzu waited. He didn't dive in too early, and he attacked when he had Storm, because he absolutely could not have fought that army without Storm. But since he delayed and since he fought with it, you know, his opponent wasn't aware necessarily that he had Storm yet. So when the storms hit, they hit in a major, big way. And now we see the supplies kind of swing the other way. Suntzu's taken a supply lead. He's getting a 4th base up, whereas the 3rd base of the Terran has just landed, and he's got that 2-2 advantage over 0-0 for a little while longer. 4 more barracks coming up from Aidan, which is, I think, a correct play. You are going to need a lot more production if you're going to be dealing with a Protoss ball, but with +3 melee and even shield upgrades coming in, it's going to be a long time before Aidan reaches any level of parity in upgrades. Whew. Those of you Aidan fans out there, I know specifically Aidan is watching, and he is an Aidan fan, surprisingly enough. Things are looking a little bit dicey at this point, I have to say. Combat Shield is almost done, a little bit late. That is a staple of, I think, Aidan's play. He's a great macro Terran, but sometimes the dude leaves this Combat Shield just a little bit too long before he gets it in. More Templar coming down here from Suntzu, and Liberators starting to come in for Aidan, and Liberators are a great unit in TVP. They allow you to complement the tanks. They allow you a great amount of space control, and if you can control space, you can cut off bases, and then you allow your bio to stem on in. Actually, here comes a Warp Prism coming on in and might snipe the +2 attack. This would be huge. He already has an upgrade advantage, but that upgrade advantage will get bigger. Needs to get this Warp Prism out of here. The Marines are stemming in. Those cells losing their lives, and just barely the Warp Prism goes down. But, you know, that's like maybe 600-700 minerals, maybe a little bit more of an investment from Suntzu. And you might be like, oh, all he got was an engineering bay. No, what he got was a even larger window where he will have the upgrade advantage, and especially in TVP, I think that having the upgrade advantage can give you just a huge amount of momentum in these fights. He's starting to get the gases and the minerals, but more importantly the gases on this 4th base mining, and we're seeing the dividends of that gas mining as, what is this, 8 Templar and a Zealot coming on in. That's going to be 4 Archons. That's a lot of Archons. That is a lot of Archons, and now is when we really start to see this Protoss army look scary. You know, whenever in the beginning of the game, normally there's a single type of AoE that the Protoss players are relying on, whether it's a fast Colossus, whether it's fast Storm, whether they get, you know, a fast Archives and try and get into a few Archons for the defense. But once you hit the mid to late game, there's going to be multiple types of AoE for the Protoss, and the more types of AoE for the Protoss, the harder it is for the Terran to deal with it. Now, Aidan has about maxed out on his supply. He's got Liberator range coming in. I think it's about time for him to get a 4th base, which he is, and probably start to push out as, yeah, well, actually, Suntzu's going to beat him to the punch as he maxes out, actually just a second later. And we're going to have to see. We're going to have to see Who can take the win in these fights? These 4 Archons looks like going for a counterattack. Wow. Suntzu, the bulk of his army, pushes along the left side. Blue shift with these 3 attack paths. These Archons drawing a huge amount of the army away, and at the same time, he might be able to, he will definitely is going to deny this 4th base for a little while. Here comes a little bit of engagement. Huge EMPs going down, getting some of the Templar, but Storm's going down on so much of the bio and the Liberators, but I think there might just be too much Terran action. Huge storms coming in, and both players trading out a lot, but oh my gosh, a ton of SCVs going down on the other side. If he gets away with these Archons, and there's still Storm, these 2 Liberators will die to Archons. 1 Storm goes down, takes out a bunch of bio, another Storm goes down, even more bio goes down, and with these Archons, oh my gosh, Suntzu lost a lot, but he sure found a way to trade out for so much damage. A ton of SCVs, a ton of army going down, and like all good players, Suntzu, when he attacks, he expands behind it. That's the mark of a good player. Good players, you'll see, they never attack frivolously. If you attack and you do nothing behind it, maybe you get some damage done, but at the end of the day, you're probably going to come out only a little bit better than when you began your attack. What really good players will do is they will attack strategically, and they will expand behind their aggression, and have that aggression be for a purpose. So I think that's a really underrated move and a really smart move that we see Suntzu doing here, and it's reflected in the supply. I mean, Aidan's done a good job of hanging on at this back and forth aggression, but he's 20 supply down. His 3-3 is not quite done, and it looks like Suntzu's transitioning into Colossus, yet another type of AoE for Aidan to deal with now. He is getting more and more Liberators, so that count is getting high. And I don't know. It's tough to see. It's tough to judge at this point in the game. I feel like Suntzu certainly has an advantage, but we're also at a point where it could swing either way. These SCVs getting in, repairing all the mechanical units, which is smart. You don't want half your Minivex being at 4 health and then just dying as soon as a single storm hits them. Suntzu at the same time using his map control to clear out these rocks, which will allow him a little bit more maneuverable passage across the map. That War Prism not going to get anything done, as there are Liberators and Marines aplenty there to defend. Let's see. Only 1 ghost out on the map, and when there's 6 or 7 Templar, or actually here, sorry, we have 3 ghosts now. So these EMPs could potentially get tons of damage done. We'll have to see. They're going down. Huge storms coming in, though. Will he? Oh, he got all of them before he could center mass get a storm on that, and that advantage from Suntzu kind of evaporates as that army walks into the meat grinder of Marines and Liberators, and the lonely Colossus. The lonely Colossus. Suntzu still has a huge economy, though, and will use that economy for huge warp-ins off the back of it at home. But Aidan, I think, kind of smelling blood in the water. Whenever you kill a lot of units, you want to get across the map and you want to do counter damage, and this is certainly a point in the game where I think that he can. Tons of Liberators, tons of ghosts, or 3 ghosts. And a bunch of bio coming in, a huge storm coming down, and these zealots are actually getting onto the army. They're clearing up so much of it, but there might just be a little bit too much here from Aidan as the last zealot's going down. There is a group of stalkers here trying to clear out the Liberators, but with ghosts and Marines and so many Liberators, it looks like, unless he gets a kind of great engagement, Suntzu's going to have to pull out a miracle here, as this counterattack from Aidan is just a little bit too strong. He's trying to get away. These Liberators taking pot shots. Another great storm going down, getting more of the bio. But, I mean, how do you attack into all of these liberation zones? This base, it looks like, will go down. More bio streaming across the map, and Suntzu frantically trying to warp in as much as he can to try and defend at this. But Aidan playing it slow, walking his Liberators forward, and I just don't know if he's going to be able to pull this one out. Suntzu, he's got a decent amount of army, but so many Liberators here. He's going to try and dive in, picks off 2 right off the bat. Here come the Zealots, but they're fighting into deeper liberation zones from Liberators all the way back here, and here the bio really starts to engage it, and the last of the Archons are going down. This one is morphing in a liberation zone. It's going to die. These 2 Zealots will fall, and I think Aidan might have just checkmated him out of this game. Cannons trying to maybe help with the defense, but there's just not quite enough. And GG is called. Aidan takes a very epic TVP on Blue Shift. What a game. What a game. I am going to throw up my overlay, as I need a minute after the slugfest of a TVP that was, but we are going to be heading into our final map of the night, which will be a ZVP, I want to say, submitted from Kugel, so stay tuned, I will be back shortly. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to our final match of the evening. It's going to be another one on Blue Shift, a very popular submission map we've seen. It's going to be a PvZ. It's going to be featuring Kugel and Irksome Oswald. So I'm going to call him Irk. As you guys know, I like abbreviating names, as saying them super fast when you're casting is a little bit annoying. And while we kind of get into this game, as it looks like we are seeing macro openings for both players, I just want to give a big shout out to all of you guys, everybody who's watching, either on here or via the VOD, which will be put up on our YouTube channel, which is right below the stream. You'll see. I would encourage you, pretty much all of the replay casts and all of the show match series will be up on that YouTube channel. So if you're interested, highly encourage you guys to check it out. Kugel actually took, last night, he took the week 2 of the show match series against Spore in convincing fashion in PvZ. So I'm interested to see how this PvZ plays out for him. But again, big thank you to everyone that's watching, everybody that's submitted, everyone that's been oh so kind and supportive of the content that tonight myself and Wrath have been producing. Wrath, unfortunately, could not join me this evening, but he will be back to join me for week 3 of the show match series this upcoming weekend, probably. But my rambling aside, getting into this game, looks like we are, as I said, seeing pretty macro openings from both these guys. We had a quick hatch. along with, the standard, I'm getting hatch, I'm getting gas, I'm getting pool for the Zerg player, and the standard, I'm going to expand gateway cyber, second gateway to wall off from the Protoss. Kugel, I think very smartly, keeping this probe over by the third base location, as if you can get an idea of when the Zerg places down that third base, it doesn't guarantee, it's not a full scout, but it does give you, actually taking the off third is the Zerg player. But nonetheless, in general, if you can scout the third base timing, it really, really, really does inform a lot of the decisions that you will make as a Protoss player. Unfortunately, maybe a little bit of a mind game from Oswald is going to take this off third base, and we're going to see the same build that Kugel had massive success in the show match series with, which is the fast expand into Stargate play. And this is just a super robust build. As did he see it? Yeah, so he did see the third base. But anyway, the Stargate build, pretty much, it allows you to be robust defensively as he picks off one. Oh, is attacking the queen. Gets two. Gets three. I think he will get four, maybe five. Gets four. I think he's going to get a fifth. All those Zerglings popping out will prevent the fifth, but either way, 4 drones for your initial adept and the scouting, well worth it for the Protoss player, and an Oracle behind it, and that's what I'm talking about. That Oracle, if you're getting all-in, very useful. If you're not getting all-in and you want to take a fast third base, very useful. And that's what's awesome about this play, is that it is super adaptive, right? You can use it to if you see roaches, you get a Void Ray. If you see Lang and Bane, you get a second Oracle. And the bottom line is you can take that opener and allow yourself to transition to whatever you want to do while still giving yourself the space to react to potential craziness from your opponent. Now, it looks like we're not going to see too much of that craziness, as it looks like Oswald is droning up a decent amount. Twilight will be the follow-up for Kugel, so probably going to get into charge and a third base in about a minute, I would expect. Let's see how much this Oracle can get done, though. Goes into the third base, immediately picks off one drone, is going to fly into the main. Keep in mind there are no spore crawlers up, so we'll get a second, a third, a fourth. So 4 drones already going down. There are 2 queens here. I think this Oracle's going to die. Ooh, that's a big deal. Now, 4 drones is decent damage, but you really want to keep that Oracle alive, as a lot of times one of the responses to seeing a fast third from a Zerg player will be, okay, I'm going to flood with lings. I've got 3 hatcheries, constantly pumping out larvae. I'm going to try and flood out a ton of Zerglings and try and take out your third base. And one of the things that's very useful at defending that is an Oracle, which can not only be uncontested in the sky, but kill a crap ton of Zerglings very quickly. 5:30 mark, we will see the third base coming up for Kugel. That's around on time. A huge Overlord swell from Oswald. I expect to probably see some units, and this is exactly the Ling flood I was talking about. I expect him to probably try and use these to counterattack at the third. Baneling Nest and Hydra Den coming up, so a very standard Zerg mid-game, I think, is going to follow, right? In a normal game, you're going to see probably 60 to 70% of Zerg players want to get into Ling, Bane, Hydra, as it's a very strong composition in the Zerg mid game, right? Banelings ideally blow up the Zealot line, and then you let your Lings and, more importantly, your Hydralisks clean up everything else that is there. So Templar Archives coming up, that's important, as, I mean, if you were wondering with the answer to the question of what's good against Lings, Banelings, and Hydralisks, the answer is Storm. Storm is good against all of those things, but good Zergs won't necessarily give you the opportunity to hit the money storms, or will at least limit those opportunities. Upgrades are coming in from the Zerg player. We have Hydra range and Baneling speed coming up, as the first Hydras are going to come out, and with Storm a decent way away, I think there might be a window where Oswald might be able to put some pressure onto this third base as he secures the fourth base of his own. Oh no, sorry, not a macro hatch. That's the fourth base, and there we see it, the Lurker Den. And you know, I said Lingbane Hydra is a very strong mid game, and it is, but Lurkers are I would classify them as a late mid game unit, right? You do need Hydras to morph them in, so they're not the fastest unit to get out, but they really can dominate a lot of Protoss ground armies in the mid game, especially once you start to get into like 6+ of them. It can be a super dicey defense, especially, right? Like, let's take a look at this position. If I get like 4 or 5 Lurkers back here, which seems doable, they don't need to do damage. All they need to do is zone the Protoss army, which will be over here away, while my Hydras and Lings shell away at everything else. And what you do is you're attacking across the map, but you're forcing the Protoss to come into you, and Lurkers are not fun to attack into. Already a little bit of aggression, a ton of Lings coming in. They're going to turn around. That is the correct decision. Has an Overlord over here, is checking the fourth base, and it will see this Warp Prism coming across the map, and Oswald really starting to expand that creep. And that's another thing that's super important, especially on a map like Blue Shift, is once you get that creep all spread out, you really can transition between the different attack paths very quickly. And here we go. It looks like he is going to break down these rocks, as most Zerg players want to do. They want to have use their creep to have that mobility all across the map, and I think that it's going to be on to Kugel to wait until, you know, I think he might warp a few Archons. Yep, he will. Wait until he's got these 2 Archons and these 4 Templar already with Storm, and maybe try and make a little bit of something happen across the map, but he's going to be very careful. He's going to be very careful of this army. Oh, don't want Banelings killing the rocks. Luckily, the Zerglings do block it. And this is really tough, right? 9 more drones to the 71 that are already out. So the Zerg player is going to be at 80 drones, which is tops, right? You couldn't ask for a stronger economy. 80 drones and a hive tech on the way, that's where you want to be. So if he can defend throughout this mid game, I think that Oswald should be in a pretty decent spot to go into the late game. He's secured himself his 4 bases, his drone count is high, and with no 4th base on the way just yet, I think it's going to be on Kugel, his responsibility to try and get some damage done. A little bit of a counterattack with these 4 Zealots coming in, maybe coordinated along with a push. We will have to see. This Warp Prism making its way into the main base while these Zealots wander on in, and we'll have to see a huge Zealot warp in coming into the main. Let's take a look here. Looks like the Queen will go down, and immediately drones are following. At the same time, these rallied Hydralisks are stuck on the Zealots. More drones going down there. Looks like the attack at the 4th base, or the third base, will get cleaned up along with the attack in the main. So, you know, nice posturing. He's certainly got a decent amount of damage done, but nothing backbreaking, right? Like, this is all damage that, if we take a look at Oswald's bank, he can recover from. His supply has dropped, but he's got only 7 larvae. Oh, he just remade 16 drones. Sorry. So he just pretty much completely remade the damage that Kugel did. But taking advantage of that, while the larva count is low, Kugel, it looks like, will start to push across this map and clear out some of this creep, which he needs to. You know, you don't want to have the creep highway leading up to the edge of your base, as that just leaves the Zerg way too much of an opportunity to push out. Does not want to push too far out, it seems. Looks like Oswald will try and take an engagement. The Lings Hydras are getting a good wraparound. Storms are coming in. They're pretty good. And actually forcing all of this back is Oswald. So many Storms going down, but just enough of an army there from Oswald to push everything back for Kugel. More Zealots, more Templar coming on in. A 4th base down here or up here, I should say, at around the 12 o'clock position, coming up for Kugel, but more. This is a huge mid-game army coming in for Oswald, and he might have forgotten that he's got hive tech, as you know, we don't see a spire for a greater spire and broodlords, and we do not see an ultralisk cavern just yet. But even still, So many banelings. Okay, 8 banelings. But so many hydras, right? 38 hydras, it's 38 hydras, right? There's a lot of damage in that army. It is very vulnerable to storm, but with the amount of creep that he has, if he micros them effectively, especially with vipers coming on in, if he can pull some of these important units and engage well with the Hydraling Bane, you can just smash armies on creep. You can just smash them. This observer providing very valuable detection that is going to allow for a little bit of creep to be cleaned up, but such a huge army. Oh, looks like neither player wants to take that fight, and I think that's probably the case for Oswald. His Vipers aren't out yet, and this army is very vulnerable to the huge amount of storms. That's a lot of storm in this army. And looks like Kugel knows that, and he's going to say, okay, you don't want to engage me? Cool, I'm going to push back the creep. So, trying to keep this creep under control. It's still pretty established on the other 2 attack paths, but, I mean, you do what you can. And it looks like he's actually pushing it back pretty far up here in the middle of the map. This small force will get taken out, though. And he looks like Oswald might be kind of hunting for an engagement now. We do see his upgrades are extremely lacking, though. I hadn't even noticed that. He has no upgrades on the field to the 2-2 of the Protoss army, and that's a big deal. Aw, the Lonely Immortal. No, but that's a big deal. I mean, his army's huge, but it's just not going to be as efficient as the heavily upgraded one of the Protoss player. Luckily, 1-1 will be coming in here along with double Spire, so it is going to be Broodlords, I think, is the tech, or the hive tech of choice will be for Oswald, but with adaptive talons and 2-2 missile attacks, even pathogen glands, so he's kind of getting infestor upgrades, so I'm actually not exactly sure what direction we're going to go for the Zerg player, but for the Protoss, I think we all know. 3 Stargates, +1 air, right? Like, this has the lookings of a carrier transition, and I think that is pretty much what every Protoss wants to get into in the hyper late game of ZVP, but we will have to see. Kugel in the chat said, he's a turret. Yeah, he's a turret. He's the #1 turret. But now, looking at the actual real action of this game, it looks like we have a huge mid-game army with those adaptive talents, those lurkers burrowing so quickly, and Kugel cannot fight into that. He does not want to take an engagement just yet. And does... Okay, yeah, he does. He has to have a fleet beacon, as 4 carriers are being produced, and he is maxed out, which means as those carriers come out, he's going to want to start trading his army, right? Because Zealots are good, Archons are good, Immortals are good, but you really want to start getting into as many carriers as you possibly can. And actually, yeah, he's got 67 probes, so I think it will be a little bit of army that's traded out to allow him to get into those carriers. But, I mean, both these guys are pretty much getting into the late game that they want, right? Like, there haven't been any, like, well, here, you lose 70 supply of army right there, boom, kind of fights. So both these guys should be... The single Hydralisk, will he get lifted? Nope, he won't. That's actually pretty cute. Tries to bait a big army, maybe across this area, and maybe get some pot shots. Won't end up working, but still, really smart. And it might, as here comes the bulk of the army here for Oswald. These lurkers in a super annoying spot, as they're up here on the high ground, but they're still kind of covering the low ground. How will he choose to engage this army? There is no detection, which means that this Overseer will be allowed to see everything, and he might be able to storm up onto the high ground. Feedback's going down onto the Vipers, but with the blinding clouds, oh, there come the storms. And despite being in a great position, it looks like Kugel might just be able to throw him back, although where once there were, I think around 9 to 10 Templar, now there's only 4, but here come the carriers. And this is where this army starts to get really, really, really scary for the Protoss player. And Oswald knows it. He's getting air upgrades, he's getting Corruptors, he's getting Vipers, and he's getting more Hydralisks. But meanwhile, across the map, the Vipers do go down, and these Hydralisks forced to back out as they really can't afford to fight this. He lives. Lurkers burrowing down. Some of the ground army starting to go in here. There are a bunch of storms, but it looks like he's going to allow his carriers to lead the charge. The Hydra's trying to jump on in on it, but they're very clumped. Oh, a huge storm goes down onto the main bulk of the Hydralisks, but there are still a lot and not many interceptors left. Needs, I think, a few more storms. Good storm. Oh, and here come the Corruptors, and he needs more of a ground army if he wants to fight this, I think. Kugel pushing forward, but with the reinforcements coming in here from Oswald, I think he might just be able to defend it. A few Broodlords actually coming in. I don't know if that's what he wants. I think he should stick with those Corruptors until the carriers are dead, but I guess that's to deal with the ground army, and it might make sense. Kugel has had enough. He's pushing in. More feedbacks going in. A pull goes down, but it might just not be enough as that carrier escapes. A huge storm goes down on all of the Zerg air units, and here come the Corruptors. They're trying to dive in. They snipe the first carrier. Looks like they will actually get a second. Will they get the third? They will. And here they come. They take out the Warp Prism. They get another carrier, and they will clean up the carriers. And with the carriers dead, there's nothing left to challenge these Broodlords, which turned out to actually, I was wrong, be a fantastic decision. Oswald has now taken a commanding spot in this game. He's got Corruptors enough to control the air. He's got Broodlords to handle the ground with 18 more Hydralisks as kind of a ground DPS support, and bases coming up all around the map. Kugel's going to have to pull some magic out if he wants to get himself back in this game, and it looks like that will be where these rallied. That will be via counterattacks. So these zealots heading on across the map, a huge army here from Oswald coming on in, and honestly, not enough. Storm will just barely be ready as this attack hits on a few of these Templar, but only one. It looks like one storm, a few carriers, a few Archons, versus just too much. Although this counterattack being very successful, even if it doesn't do damage, has pulled the entire Zerg army away and bought Kugel valuable time that he definitely needs to get the army that can actually challenge this high-tech, high-corruptor Zerg ball. And, you know, he was down in upgrades earlier in this game, but now he's up at 2-2. He's getting more zealots actually coming in. He's getting 3-3 for his Hydras. He's getting +2 air. You know, this is no longer a low upgraded Zerg army. This is a very, very highly upgraded Zerg army. And taking a look at the income tab, a lot of income, pretty significantly higher there for Oswald. And I don't know. This is tough. This is tough. He has managed to secure this, what, 5th base? Yeah, 5th base. Is Kugel. And so I think he should be able to get a solid max out going, but it's all going to come down to taking a good engagement. And this is a very difficult army to engage for the Zerg player. More and more Templar coming out. Let's take a look. He does have actually only 3, one of which I think might have 2 storms, and the other of which will have 1 when the engagement happens. So, you know, 4 storms, not a ton. That's not a ton of storms. And he really needs to start challenging this economy for the Zerg player. As taking a look at the bank, it's a very, very large economy that the Zerg player does have. These Broodlords and I think a few accidentally created swarm hosts starting to shell away at this base. The shield battery is holding strong, but that will only last for a little while. And it looks like these guys are going to start a little bit of a base trade. Oh, never mind. A huge recall coming in here from Kugel. Here comes the fight, and Oswald, I think correctly, decides to back off as these carriers start shelling away at the army. There's a bunch of them, but here come the Corruptors. They pick off 1, they pick off 2, they just kill these carriers so fast. And good storms coming down, but those carriers just die. Now this base up at the top left-hand side is getting taken out, but, you know, Oswald re-expanding to the other corner of the map while still trying to push in. Huge storms going down, more Broodlords coming on in. He needs more storms, and he needs them to be good ones as there's Broodlords still in the sky. And Oh, this is such a rough position for the Protoss player, as there's very little to challenge these Broodlords. More carriers coming in, and finally these Corruptors are getting low on health. They've taken a lot of AoE over the course of this fight, and it looks like these Corruptors might start to go down. 20 more on the way, but with those Corruptors falling, these carriers should remain unchallenged in the air, and if all these Broodlords go down, that's a big deal for the Zerg player, and he knows it. He's backing out. He's going to try and escape with whatever he can. Really back and forth game here. It looks like these Broodlords are kind of kiting back, trying to keep the ground army from getting on top of them, while maybe baiting these carriers into the huge Corruptor switch that he has gone for. Oh, Kugel's army a little bit on move command here is going to start picking off these Broodlords. 1 goes down, 2 goes down, 3 goes down, 4, 5. 5 of them go down, but here comes the counter push from Oswald. There are so many Corruptors, and they're going to take care of every single carrier. And he killed a bunch of Broodlords, but there's still 4 in the sky, and that's a lot. Kugel dropping down to 105 supply, not looking like he might have any answer to these carriers, to these Broodlords and Corruptors. He's getting another base up, but he's down in supply, and I think he kind of feels it. They're on equal worker counts, and the supply is about 30 in favor of Oswald. A ton of Lings coming on in here, a bunch of Corruptors, and still these 4 Broodlords with 3 more on the way. There are no storms. Here come the Broodling shots coming on in. These Lings are not trading effectively, as there is an Archon that is going to mass up the kills, it looks like, but when these 3 Broodlords hatch, I just don't know what there will be to challenge in the air. These Corruptors are fearlessly trying to dive in on to the carriers, but they're not quite going to get it done. Most of the ground army has gone down. There are more carriers coming out, but this Corruptor count is super high. He is going to try and start focusing things down, microing these carriers back very well. And he's actually starting to turn this fight around. The Corruptor count is so low. They've taken, I think, 1 or 2 too many free Archon shots. The last 2 Corruptors do go down, and actually Kugel has found a way to turn this seemingly impossible fight around. The last of the Broodlords do fall. Holy shit, guys. Holy shit. Kugel now has a supply advantage. He's pushing across the map. This base is going to fall, and I'll tell you what, that huge bank that Oswald has went into those Corruptors, and they all died. They ate too many shots from the Archons. They ate too many storms. They dived a little bit too deep to try and get onto these carriers, and if Kugel can keep this army alive, he's got a decent amount of mining going, and I think he might just be able to end him. There are some Corruptors and Hydras still left on the map. Here comes possibly the last engagement of the map, as these carriers are safe behind a wall of Zealots, but actually no. Retreating back, he's zoned the Zerg army, and I think he can eliminate these last 2 mining bases of the Zerg player. Oswald tries to get in while these carriers are slightly out of position. 1 does go down, but for what? Most of his anti-air? So much going down. He has 15 more Hydras on the way, but Kugel not taking his foot off the pedal. Here's 15 more Zealots, and they're going to pick off a bunch of these Hydralisks that are on move command. And this mining base goes down, this mining base is going down, and this is just too much damage, I think. Kugel, through the course of a ton of fights where he was fairly behind, I think has managed to get himself a decent advantage. 3 more carriers coming out, and he's just going to outproduce the Zerg player, as, you know, that 50 Corruptor count or whatever that Oswald had earlier in the game is not something he can afford to get again. This is really his last fully mining base. He's got a little bit of mining over here, but we just saw both of these extractors die. This is the last amount of gas mining that Oswald had on the map, and that hatchery just died. So, yeah. I mean, really, honestly, a masterclass of a game from Kugel. GG is called. Whew. Whew. Wow. Well, would be lying if I said we did not have a real treat in terms of the games that we were privy to see today. You know, we had that base trade at the beginning from Arctic. We had the ZVZ from Jay that featured some really back and forth Zerg play showing how to pick apart your opponent. We had a TVP between Suntzu and Aidan that was, I mean, go back and watch it to yourself because my brief blurb will not do it justice. And then, maybe best of all, we had that final PVZ from Kugel that I thought he was going to lose for probably a good 50%, probably a good 90% of the late game, but like, I don't know. Really, really, really awesome submissions this week. It was a ton of fun to cast. My voice is dying from the raw awesomeness of what I have seen. So I'm going to get my quick plugs in, and I'm going to head on out of here. So again, thank you to the Ris3n community. Thank you to all of the viewers for tuning in. I will try and get the previous week's community cast up on YouTube along with this cast that I did tonight. So if you have any interest, you want to show your cast off to your friends, send them the VOD on YouTube, you know. And the other thing I would say is keep on submitting replays. I mean, I love casting replays. We're going to feature Wrath when he's available. He loves casting it. And I guess the last thing would be sure to tune in to the Ris3n Show Match series coming up this weekend, where Kugel, the guy who we saw in that last match, will be taking on a new challenger. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I'm going to play the intro I made one more time because it rocks. It fucking rocks. But that's it for me. Have a great night, ladies and gentlemen.